The Scottish village of Gretna Green, just across the border from England, has been celebrating weddings for more than 200 years.
Would you two just bring out your glasses together for me?
It's a legacy from the days when Scotland's marriage age was 16 and England's was 21, making this the elopement capital of the Union.
For richer, for poorer.
For richer, for poorer.
In sickness and in health.
For sickness and in health.
Now, the Union itself, after 300 years of marriage, is under threat.
For as long as we both shall live.
That's a big responsibility you've got there. Now, don't break the anvil.
Yeah.
Some in this country of 5 million want to break the ties that bind. Others are clinging for dear life.
I think independence as an idea is a thing that's spreading. Nations should be independent, and Scotland is a nation, and Scotland should be independent. Yeah, I think our time has come.
Around the world, nations are drawing closer together, and so would it make sense to say to the rest of the world, after 300 years we can't live together as one people on the same island?
If the opinion polls are to be believed, Scottish Nationals are set to end Labour's 50-year dominance in the north at next month's regional elections. And breaking away from Britain is part of the plan.
Things are going well. They're going great. Couldn't be better.
It's about independence, it's about aspiration, it's about everything that you can do for yourself and much, much more. Scotland's a nation, a historic nation, and we want to see it independent and fulfil all the ambitions that we have.
The leader of the Scottish Nationals is Alex Salmond.
Delegates, my name is Alex Salmond, and I'm running for First Minister.
He's a former oil economist, currently one of 6 Scottish Nationals in the British Parliament in Westminster, and a thorn in Tony Blair's side.
You know, delegates, every time Blair flies up to place his big carbon footprint in our country, SNP support soars. He's on his way out, we're on our way in. His time is over, our time is coming, or to coin a phrase, he is the past, we are the future now.
The British government, which may soon be headed by a Scot, warns that independence would lead to economic collapse. It says nationalists are gambling with Scotland's future. But the Nationals believe Scotland's growing confidence, affluence and individuality can make independence possible once again. Despite 300 years of union, Scottish identity is as strong as ever. Nothing symbolises this more than Burns Night.
Robert Burns.
Celebrated every year with plenty of poetry, whiskey and haggis, Burns Night marks the birthday more than 250 years ago of Scotland's most famous poet and patriot, Robert Burns.
The suitor told his queerest stories, the landlord's laugh was ready chorus.
Robert Burns's poetry embodies much of what's typically Scottish, a quick wit, passion and patriotism.
His knife, see rustic labour dicht, and cut you up with ready slicht, trenching your gushing entrails, brecht like ony ditch.
Burns was agonised by the loss of Scotland's independence.
Come saddle my horses and call out my men, and hold the Westport and let us get free. For it's a whale of bonnets so bonny and me.
Centuries after Robert Burns's death, that same debate has returned with a vengeance.
Think, ye may buy the joys o'er dear. Remember, Tam O'Shanter's mare.
The debate over Scotland's future is currently playing to packed audiences. At Edinburgh University, they've come to hear Professor Tom Devine, one of Scotland's most acclaimed historians.
Well, the Union is under a greater critical evaluation.
Since the Act of Union was signed, he says, England and Scotland have been bound together by mutual interests, such as the monarchy, defence and religion. Times, however, have changed.
What's happened really is that almost all the great historical foundations of union have been stripped away. The empire is gone. Another factor which cemented attitudes in the Union was the joint Protestantism of England and Scotland against the French and Spanish enemies. So all of these basic foundations of union have disintegrated, and therefore it's not surprising that the future of the Union is on the agenda.
Polls say 35% of Scots support independence, but that could rise because of growing disillusionment with Tony Blair's Labour leadership.
The Scottish Parliament adjourned on the 25th day of March in the year 1707 is hereby reconvened.
8 years ago, a devolved Scottish Parliament was approved, allowing Scots to manage local health, criminal justice and education.
Our primary loyalty is with the people of Scotland, in line with the Scottish constitutional tradition of the sovereignty of the people.
The Blair government thought this would silence those calling for a greater hand in Scotland's governance. Instead, many Scots want more.
The world is moving to favour small independent countries in large trading blocs. These are the most successful countries in the world, like Ireland, like Iceland, like Norway, and they are because they benefit from social cohesion, the ability to make rapid decisions, particularly on the economy, and they have access to the world and international marketplace just as much as any big country does.
The northeast city of Aberdeen was once a big fishing port. Stuart Devine remembers trawlers once filled the harbour, but then a new industry took over. Off Aberdeen's coast, oil was discovered in the North Sea.
It's changed Aberdeen forever. All for the good. I would say that the benefits that came from oil have just been absolutely fantastic for the city, you know.
Experts say half the vast oil reserves have already been extracted. But Scottish nationalists want the remaining billions flowing from the oil fields to benefit a future independent Scotland. And they don't plan to wait for independence.
Even before independence, I think Westminster should consider setting up an oil fund in Scotland so as we can get at least a fraction of the benefits that other countries have had from their resources. It's a no-brainer. I mean, oil is going to be worth more in price terms over the next 40 years than it's been over the last 40 years. So in terms of the value of the economic rent, we're not even halfway through.
Right, folks, the bigger fish for the junior. Standard haddock. Standard haddock. You're having that.
The energy boom hasn't just made the multinational oil companies wealthy. Stuart Devine co-owns a thriving fish and chip restaurant which caters to thousands of customers a week.
No peas with scampi, is it? Peter, there's an infant fish for 4 there, okay?
From a single restaurant 20 years ago, there are now 14 in the chain. Growth thanks to oil. Yet Stuart Devine says you can't build a future on it.
That was very, very nice.
Good,
Really
excellent,
enjoyed that.
excellent. Super. You know, I think that a lot of the nationalism has really been backed up by the fact that this is our oil. You know, and that's a dangerous road to go along. Because as I say, the oil won't last forever. So that's okay. So you chose independence because you thought we can do it with oil. What are you going to do when the oil's not here?
Farming's had quite a difficult time for the last 2 or 3 years. But it's getting a bit better now. How long that'll last for, I do not know.
The founder of Scotland's newest political party also voices caution at jumping on the nationalist bandwagon.
A long time ago, you farmed just a home farm, which might only be 100. You might own a lot of other land, but you probably only farm 120, 150 acres.
Archie Stirling is a laird, a Scottish landlord who can trace his ancestry back 700 years.
I believe that the thing that matters most is what affects Scotland. It's Scottish interests that matter. The Union has served Scotland very well, and it serves Scotland well to this day. I'm not frightened of Scotland being independent, but I think we should think long and hard before we change something that's working.
The Laird of Keir, as Archie Stirling is known, is a political novice with a reputation as a playboy. But one of his major concerns is a growing divide between rich and poor.
Do you know what people feel outside the estate?
Yes, I certainly do. Yes, I talk to people all over Scotland. And I think people are dissatisfied with the standard of, they don't feel represented by the politicians.
And while overall Scotland is more affluent than it's ever been, wealth hasn't been spread evenly.
A recent survey said 1 in 5 Scots live in poverty, and those poor communities are not so far from some of the richest cities.
This is the working class town of Linwood, near Glasgow Airport. 40 years ago, it was home to 6,000 workers and a state-of-the-art car factory, producing an iconic British family car called the Imp. Linwood thrived as long as the factory did, but production never exceeded its targets, and by the early 80s, after changing hands and losing millions, the factory closed. At the local club, former car workers enjoy a weekly get-together. After being laid off, many never worked again. Sam Nichol did find work elsewhere after 19 years at the factory.
Everybody was employed at that time, so this club was really booming at that time as well.
After the factory closed, Norrie Campbell found work as a bartender. These photographs from the 70s show him on a football outing with fellow workers.
Where can we get a job for a young kid that's wanting to be an engineer or something like that? There's nothing. Nothing.
The factory was pulled down years ago, but downtown Linwood remains a shadow of its former self. These days it resembles a war zone, hence its nickname Basra.
It has been dying since the car plant closed, and the whole thing's coming down.
Long-time resident Ian Wilson explains that the local MP has just invited Britain's biggest supermarket chain to buy up and redevelop the town centre.
And there's a lot of buildings at the back will come down as well.
He hopes his crumbling Linwood will soon turn over a new leaf.
How does this make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel terrible. I'm not ashamed to live in Linwood, but this is not doing Linwood's reputation any good at all.
Linwood is a Labour stronghold, and the local MP, Wendy Alexander, believes Scotland has greatly benefited from the Union.
If you want to spend the money on separation, setting up embassies in Australia, for example, or your own army and navy, that's fine. But the consequence of that is that we're not actually investing in education. And the challenge in Scotland is no different from across the globe as to how do you meet the challenge of globalisation, the Indias and the Chinas.
The National Party says if Scotland controlled its economy, affluence would be more evenly distributed.
We've got poverty amid plenty in Scotland. I just find it so extraordinary that pompous twats like Prime Minister Blair can seriously, in their condescending, patronising attitude, come up and tell a country like Scotland, which has contributed so much to the wider world, that somehow we can't govern our own affairs.
But in Linwood, Ian Wilson isn't convinced by any political arguments.
I don't think the bulk of the population care whether it's independent or not. I think the bulk of the population would like to see the problems solved. The deprivation got rid of, the poverty got rid of, good housing for everybody. That's what the people want rather than independence.
So you can't see any party that will bring about that kind of change?
No, I can't.
When Scottish landlords signed away their nation's independence 300 years ago, it took decades for Scots to feel they reaped the benefits. While Scotland has come of age, a growing number of people are disillusioned by Westminster. But it may take a lot of convincing on both sides of the border to let the Scots run free.